also just found out that my video is already half an hour and I've only gone through about 5 books. So I'm going to try and pick up the pace a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to talk about some more closer to YA fiction that has fantastical elements to it and also a connection to real life. So those would be This Is Going to Fall, A Crown So Cursed by L.L. McKinney, Chocolate Chip City, debut novel by B. Steadwell. I'm also going to talk about Inevitable, Skin by Evie Zaboy, and then also Yesterday's History by Kasoko Jackson. And I feel like that's it for sort of this set of books. It's going to get messy, and I don't care. Okay. Yesterday's History by Kasoko Jackson. Again, this is a book that I had for a while. It's a, black gay boy figuring out that he can travel, time travel, and trying to figure out what the hell does that mean? What do we do with that? So a little less than 24 hours ago, you did something extraordinary, something you might not understand, might want to think was a dream or can't explain. I'm here to tell you what happened to you did actually happen. You did jump through time, and you are, for all intents and purposes, a time traveler. Do you want to read a book about a young black gay boy who is a time traveler? Of course you do. This is the book. It was cute. It was cute, and I don't read a lot of books with gay boys, right? Just falling in like with each other and like love triangles and gay boys. And I was like, oh, this is new. This is refreshing. This is cute. I liked it. I did. The main character like made some choices that I was like, really? But I mean, it was just cute. I liked it. I recommend it. Okay, Skin by Evie Zaboy. So, I enjoyed this one as well. If you hear a sort of tone, it's just like, if you're going to read YA, then you need to be prepared to read characters like that are, in their teens or early 20s, doing things that one does at that age. And so, they're not, the protagonists are not as sophisticated as those in the books that I spoke to before, which was like adult fiction for adults. And even if the story is being told from the perspective of a child, it's adult fiction, right? So there's a lightness, there's a cuteness, there's an accessibility to these books that that's there because of who they're written for, I think. So this one is about Marisol and Geneviève. And I'll just say these two black girls that, encounter each other. And I think, it's written in verse. No, it's not. Is it? I think it is written in verse. I don't know if you could see that, but written in verse from these two perspectives, Geneviève and Marisol. And I think one is she immigrated from Dominican Republic, Haiti. So 15-year-old Marisol is the daughter of a Sukunya. Every new moon, she sheds her skin like the many women before her, shifting into a fireball witch who must fly into the night and slowly sip from the lives of others to sustain her own. But Brooklyn is no place for fireball witches with all its bright lights, shut windows, and bolt-locked doors. While Marisol hoped they would leave their old traditions behind when they immigrated from the islands, she knows this will never happen while she remains ensnared by the one person who keeps her chained to her magical past, her mother. 17-year-old Geneviève is the daughter of a college professor and a newly minted older half-sister of twins. Her worsening skin condition and the baby's constant wailing keep her up at night, When she stares at the dark sky with a deep longing to inhale it all, she hopes to quench the hunger that gnaws at her, one that seems to reach for some memory of her estranged mother. When a new nanny arrives to help with the twins, a family secret connecting her to Marisol is revealed, and Genevieve begins to find answers to questions she hadn't even thought to ask. So, you know, these two are connected in some way that gets revealed as you read the story. It was cute. I would read it. It's not my favorite. It wasn't my favorite of E.B. Savoy's work. I think I liked American Street better, but you learn a lot of history, and I love Black communities in urban centers that all sort of people are magical in different ways, and they all sort of know it, but they also need to eat and go to the grocery store and go to school and survive, but they all have magical elements to them. So I really like that aspect of the story. I'm going to keep this till later. A Crown So Cursed. So I believe I read, I want to say I actually read, I think I listened to, why did I do this? I read this book because I wanted to finish off the trilogy. So there's A Blade So Black, A Something So Something, and then A Crown So Cursed. What was the second one? It was had to do with, A Blade So Black, A Dream So Dark, A Crown So Cursed. So this is the third. This is, as Brittany would say, a reimagining of Alice in Wonderland. It's got Buffy the Vampire Slayer vibes, but Black protagonist interacting with a reimagined Wonderland. A third book in the trilogy. I'm glad I read it. I'll probably read it again. I would definitely recommend it. I think I have a review of the first and second book in the trilogy, and I'll probably do a review of the whole trilogy as a whole, but that is Future and Jerry. I'm giving homework to Future and Jerry, but I loved it. I'm glad that I finished it. It was great. I think there were definitely elements of Wonderland that I didn't quite get. I don't read a ton of second world fantasy, but I don't even know if this is second world fantasy, but I don't read a ton of higher fantasy, so sometimes I get lost in the minutia of the world that's been created, but it was great. Okay, now, this was a surprise, okay? I didn't even know that B. Steadwell was writing a novel, and they were. So let me tell you a little bit about B. Steadwell. So I learned about B. Steadwell many years ago. They, for me, are primarily a musician and a songwriter. They are queer. They've got a beautiful voice and a very sweet soul. And when I discovered B. Steadwell's work, I think I was just floating around on the internet looking for queer music, and I just came across one of their songs, and it was about flirting, two women flirting with each other, and I realized that it was the first time I had heard music that I actually really liked, that was very romantic and very queer, very gay, and I just fell into a B. Steadwell rabbit hole and just listened to everything they wrote, commented on their social media, and then one day, I was walking down the streets of Toronto, and this person passes me by, and I'm like, "Are you B. Steadwell?" And they just had this whole moment of "Oh my God," right? It was just really, really sweet. And since then, we've become acquaintances. And B. Steadwell actually wrote a song for Tommy for, I think it was Tommy's birthday a couple of years ago, which was really, really sweet. And then also a custom song. And B. Steadwell also wrote a song as part of the Octavia E. Butler slow read, and it was inspired by the first of the book Wild Seed. It is so haunting and so beautiful, and I will put a link to that song so you can hear it. But they're amazing, okay? Amazing. So when I see on Instagram that they've written a book, I'm like, what? Like, huh? What? Can I get a copy? And so I did. I got a copy of Chocolate Chip City by B. Steadwell. I'm going to read the back, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about it. The Jones sisters have powers. Jasmine is a queer, heartbroken baker who crafts beautiful pastries that no one in DC wants to buy. Her sister Ella is a fat and fine body worker, begrudgingly serving rich white folk. And Layla, the youngest, is an ambitious affordable housing activist in the rapidly gentrifying district. The sisters are all conjurers, but they aren't yet sure how to use their magic, and they're not sure the world deserves it. When their mother reveals her vision of princes, true love, and revolution, the jaded sisters meet her with skepticism, but after a chance encounter with the filthy rich black developer Malcolm Scott and his 2 princely children, their mother's prophecy begins to unfold. This romantic novel explores class privilege while placing black love, queer sex, and joy at its center. Okay. Chocolate Chip City was sweet. It was sweet. And I know that just knowing a little bit about B. Steadwell's reading, I know that they enjoy reading like soft, like what if you listen to their music, it's soft, it's sometimes angsty, just beautiful queer love, right? And so there's a lot of beautiful queer love in this story, and it's totally on brand for B. Steadwell. I really enjoyed the story. There was a moment like the end. I cried, and I feel like it was exactly I think what I needed. I love stories that talk about neighborhoods, and the neighborhood in this story is just so rich. You can tell that there's a lot of love for DC. And I've met a lot of black queer folks. No, that's a big lie. I've met a few black queer folks from DC, and they're all amazing. And so I just feel like there's just a love for the district in this story. So I would recommend Chocolate Chip City. The opening scene is so cool. And yeah, it was really great. Really great. Okay. So those are some of like the more YA-ish stories that I read that have like fantasy elements, some more mundane than others. Okay, now I want to talk about I guess I'll talk about Children of Anguish and Anarchy while we're here. Okay, so I read Children of Blood and Bone 3 times. And then I read Children of Virtue and Vengeance twice. And then I read Children of Anguish and Anarchy. Okay, this is hard to say on camera, because it's very easy to say off camera. It's hard to say on camera. I struggled with Children of Blood and Bone, okay? And here's why I struggled. I struggled because there's a lot of excellent writing out there. Excellent Black speculative writing out there. And I've now been on Booktube since 2017. 2017 is when I started to pay attention to Black speculative reading on purpose, out loud. And as a result of being a booktuber with niche reading interests, I started to meet people, go to conferences, and get on the radar of some publishers and Black speculative communities. And I started to consume a lot of Black speculative reading. I am not the most well-read in the whole world. when it comes to Black science fiction and fantasy or Black speculative. I do not profess to be, but on Booktube, I am top 3 when it comes to having read a lot of Black speculative fiction and have read enough now that I can compare writers to each other, stories to each other. I can do really good recommendations. I'm not shy about claiming my flowers and the work that I have done. So by the time Children of Blood and Bone came around, I had already been exposed to a lot of excellent original stories. And I was blown away by the marketing of this book, of Children of Blood and Bone. And you know when Black History Month comes around and every single store, every single bank has like a Black History Month commercial, and you're like, oh, so y'all know how to do this. You just choose not to do it for 11 months out of the 12 months of the year. But you like know how to do it. So it's a choice, right? That's what I felt about Children of Blood and Bone, where I felt like we were all told that this was the book. It was like people were saying that Children of Blood and Bone, like she was the new Octavia Butler. Okay, like that this book was like Black fantasy par excellence. And I started to see Tomi Adeyemi showing up on like late night television, like and on these lists and everything, and I was just like, what's going on, right? How is a debut novel getting all of this hoopla when you have excellent writers who have been writing for a long time, and even some newer excellent writers who are producing incredible work, but not getting the same hype, like mainstream hype. And so I'll admit that, I was expecting a spectacular story, like spectacular. And you have to remember when Children of Blood and Bone came out originally, like I was reading, like we had N.K. Jemisin doing the Broken Earth series. I think that came around the same time. I might be wrong about that because what's memory? But around that same time, I personally was reading N.K. Jemisin's work, Nella Hopkinson's work. I was doing the Octavia Butler, about to do Octavia Butler's slow read. I was reading Dr. Karen Lord. I was reading Akwaeke Emezi. I was reading fucking River Solomon's work, okay? And I was reading excellently crafted Black speculative fiction. So I had high expectations for Children of Blood and Bone, and that book didn't meet them. And then I started to get mad because all the people who were hyping Children of Blood and Bone were not people who read Black speculative work. Like the book was held up in mainstream media, and then all, whatever, like mainstream publishers and like all of these content creators who don't actually read a lot of Black speculative fiction were like hyping this book up. And so I was very upset because I was like, I can give you so many books that are better than this book, that deserve the credit, that deserve the airtime, and that deserve, the sales, deserve to be put in those fairy loot crate, whatever boxes, owl foot, whatever, right? That deserve that. And how is she getting this? Okay, so that was hard for me. And so I read and because of that, I wanted to read the books over time and read them over and over because I did have a negative bias because of all of the hoopla. I don't know Tomi Adeyemi. I'll probably never meet her. But I wanted to sort of be fair to her because I was just having this reaction about systemic discrimination in publishing and the ways in which based on how you look, based on your age, based on your sexual orientation, all the ways that oppression works. You know, some people are lifted up and some people are ignored, right? Like Nisi Shawl has written sentences that literally produced teardrops, not because of the construction of her sentences, right? Andrea Hairston can write the liminal. Cadwell Turnbull, right? Like just reading all of this work and just being like, you know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here? So I've read the whole series, and I read it for research purposes because I wanted to understand what the hype was, but I also wanted to make sure that I was reading a variety of stories. So I told myself, you know what? I'm going to read the whole trilogy. And I did. And I'm glad that I did. The story grew on me. Who knew? The story grew on me. And, you know, it got, I don't know why, but I liked it a little bit better the second, third times I read the books. I feel like it feels a lot like the Airbender stories. Like there's some, like I could find, there were other fantasy stories that I could sort of find in here, very popular stories. And I was like, okay, there's a little bit of that and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a little bit of this. But, you know, underneath it all, I really liked Zelly as a main character, and I liked her arc, and I liked her trajectory, and I liked her understanding her magic, right? And so I did like the trilogy, and I'm glad it's over and I've read it. But it was hard to get there because, sorry, I can't. The trilogy was fine. It was fine. It was fine. I don't want to overhype it. It was fine. Definitely not the worst that I've read. 100% not the best that I've read. I do think it was overhyped for reasons that are unfair to other authors, other writers, other emerging writers. You know, it's over and I read it. So I did that. That was hard. Okay. Be balanced in the comments. Okay. I'd like to now talk about the next set of books that I read. I want to talk a little bit about dystopians and futuristic stories. So we've got Sherry L. Smith's Orleans. We've got Chirayan Spain, Metatron's Children. We've got Sibo Campbell's Sky Full of Elephants. And then we have Cadwell Turnbull's The Lesson. So these have like a futuristic element to them that I found super compelling. All right. I think this is the first book I read of 2025, The Lesson. And the first book, did I read this in 2025? I think I might have read this. Yes, I read this because last year I read so Cadwell Turnbull has a trilogy. I think it's a trilogy. And No Gods, No Monsters was the first one. And We Are the Crisis was the second one. And I read that with the group on Instagram. But I hadn't read this book, which I had on my shelves prior to even buying those books. And that's The Lesson. So this is set in, I think, U.S. Virgin Islands. So an alien ship rests over Water Island. For 5 years, the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands have lived with the Ina, a race of super advanced aliens on a research mission they will not fully disclose. They are benevolent in many ways, but meet any act of aggression with disproportional wrath. This has led to a strained relationship between the Ina and the local Virgin Islanders and a peace that cannot last. A year after the death of a young boy at the hands of a Ina, Three families find themselves at the center of the inevitable conflict, witness and victim to the events that will touch everyone and teach a terrible lesson. I loved the lesson. Again, excellent writing. Cadwell Turnbull is, I say that there are some writers who can write liminal space, like can write the unknown in mind-blowing ways. I started to see this in We Are the Crisis and No Gods, No Monsters, but then also saw this in The Lesson by Cadwell Turnbull, and I love his writing. Like, I wish I did annotate this. Like, you will see, if I can come closer, like, you'll see, okay, this is a bad example, but let me see. Sometimes I'll say like, wow, Jesus, so good, or I love this, just things that he wrote. And I was just like, how did you put that sentence together? It's gorgeous. Yeah, just, okay. Mira continued to watch the whole thing as if she weren't a part of it. At one point, she lifted her hands over her head and pulled herself up just enough to laugh at them. Eventually, she got bored and let her head hang off to the side. She closed her eyes and was very still. She didn't even bother to move as they continued to whip her. Hours after sunset, when everyone had gone off to bed, she opened her eyes again. No one had dared pull her down. She lifted her hands over her head and tore the rope. She landed on her feet and started walking down the dirt path to the sea, feeling the salt wind against her naked body. She would have to repeat this process again. In a decade or two, she would go to another island and impersonate a slave fresh off the newest ship from the West African coast. What? An alien black woman impersonating a slave, finding her way onto these ships and going through the experience? Why? Why would that happen? Like, Anyway, excellent book. Okay, I recently finished Sky Full of Elephants by Sibo Campbell, and no relation. And so Sibo writes a book about, it's a futuristic United States of America where one day all the white people in the United States walk into the water and drown themselves and die. And it's called The Event. And so this tells a story of what happens after this event from the perspective of two main characters. And we learned that they are father and a daughter. That's not like a spoiler. And we, is it? No, I don't think it is. But the main character is Charlie Brunton. He's a black man. He was in jail at the time that the event occurred. And as a result of the event, he broke out of jail along with all the other black folks in jail, and he ended up being a professor at Howard. Now, I loved this story for a number of different reasons. Number one, I just think, like, when I first found out about the book, like, what would happen if there were no black people in the United States? Just immediately, how would that affect the United States? I think that's a very interesting way to talk about systemic white supremacy and all the intersecting oppressions. Like, it's just this is what you're supposed to do with speculative fiction. This is writing with purpose, right? It's asking us questions. How, instead of writing, you could write a non-fiction piece of work that describes the experience of white supremacy and how that has impacted the black psyche, right? You could do that. Lots of people do that. And you could also write Sky Full of Elephants, right? Where we use the speculative to ask, with purpose, to ask questions about our current circumstances, right? it's not a perfect story. How could it be, right? But and it went off in a direction that I didn't. I wasn't. I was.
Hi, Editing and Jerry here. What I was trying to express with my windmill arms was the fact that the story ended on a note that I did not expect it. It went in a completely different direction. And I was totally okay with it because by the time I got to the last few chapters, I'd already been exposed to a dimension of the world building that was not foretold in the synopsis, and it was a really great, satisfying story that I would recommend. Unfortunately, my camera battery chose violence, and I wasn't able to capture this last thought. With that being said, I will just note that it is a 30-minute long video right now, and it's a good place to pause. So I'll see you in the final part of my 2025 reads.